Elder Grove had always been the kind of town that looked like it belonged in a snow globe, tiny, quiet, nestled between hills and forest. Its people believed in routines, morning coffee, good fences, and most of all, keeping the children indoors after dusk. No one spoke of what happened 30 years ago. Not in front of the kids, at least. Back then, a series of child disappearances had shaken the town. The police found only bones, sometimes just clothes. Every full moon, another child. Until the night the woods caught fire, and the town believed the evil had been burned out with it. But folklore has a cruel way of looping back. 16-year-old Lyra Tanner didn't believe in bedtime stories or curses. She rolled her eyes whenever her dad, Greg, mentioned the old ways, or his carved charms hanging above the door. Her world was podcasts, eyeliner, and plans to escape Eldergrove. Then came the blood moon. She had noticed the howls, first low and guttural. They didn't rise and fall like wolves. They spoke, not in words, but in something ancient, something that scraped against her dreams. The next morning, she found the front door ajar. Muddy footprints trailed into the kitchen. Her little brother Liam's bed was empty, still warm. A deep claw mark ran across the window frame. Her father didn't speak. He just walked into the woods, shotgun in hand, and never came back. The town mobilized like it hadn't in years. Search parties, curfews, cops at every corner. But Lyra knew. She felt it. Something old had returned, something that had waited for years to taste the Tanners again. 2 days later, someone knocked on their door. Lyra opened it and screamed. It was her father, or at least something wearing his skin. His eyes were wrong. Too black. Too deep. Like looking into a well filled with maggots. Liam says hello. It croaked, its voice stretched and sticky, like muscle being peeled from bone. She slammed the door, bolted it, and backed away. The thing just laughed, a deep, rattling sound, and began to scratch at the wood. Not bang. Scratch. Like it was enjoying the fear. That night, Lyra dreamt of fur and fire. Of a wolf in a suit of skin, dancing beneath the red moon, its claws drumming against bone. She awoke to screams. Mrs. Hollywell from next door was gone. Only her dentures were found, clamped around a bloody rose stem. The sheriff called a town meeting. People were panicked, clutching old charms and crosses. Some brought back the old rules. Ash above doors, salt lines, and silver nails in windows. But Lyra had already made up her mind. She was going to end it. In her father's closet, hidden beneath an old service jacket, Lyra found a leather-bound book. Its cover was stitched, not glued, bound with a clasp shaped like a wolf's head. Inside were pages filled with glyphs, symbols, and incantations written in something that wasn't quite ink. She didn't want to ask what it was. At the back, tucked into a sealed envelope, was a note. If he comes back, don't look him in the eyes. He wears the face, but not the soul. End him before he howls your name. Lyra looked out her bedroom window. The forest was breathing again. And somewhere in the shadows, something wearing her father's grin was waiting for midnight. She clutched the book, heart pounding. Tomorrow she would go into the woods. Not to search, but to hunt. The forest wasn't quiet that night. Lyra Tanner stood at its edge, where the manicured lawns of Eldergrove gave way to ancient earth and tangled roots. Moonlight spilled like cold milk between the twisted trunks, and the trees leaned in, whispering secrets only the damned could understand. In her backpack was the book, the one her father had hidden, bound in stitched leather and inked in something thick and iron-scented. She hadn't been able to sleep after reading it. The glyphs seemed to crawl the longer she looked. A passage had stuck in her head like thorns. When the wolf devours the name, the face becomes a mask. Burn the flesh, break the bones. If he howls your bloodline, the curse begins again. She didn't fully understand it, not yet. But she knew this much. The thing wearing her father's skin wasn't done. It hadn't come back just for fun. It was hungry, and it wanted her. A low wind blew through the trees, and with it came the faintest sound, laughter. Not childish, not joyful. Mocking. Wet and hollow, like lungs full of rot. Lyra tightened the grip on her flashlight. Her phone buzzed. A single message. Unknown number. You're almost home, little lamb. She dropped it. The shadows behind the trees stirred. But Lyra didn't run. Instead, she stepped forward. The forest swallowed her whole. The deeper she went, the stranger things became. The trees weren't natural. Their bark was cracked like old hands, and sap dripped like congealed blood. Once or twice, she thought she saw faces in the trunks, open mouths screaming silently through knots and rings. She remembered the stories, the ones whispered by kids at bonfires, always laughed off. The wolf doesn't kill fast. He steals the face, wears it like a trophy, and then he dances. Lyra's flashlight flickered. And died. She smacked it. Nothing. From the path behind her came the unmistakable sound of bare feet slapping wet earth. She didn't dare turn around. Then a voice. Soft. Familiar. Lyra. It was Liam. Her baby brother. But it couldn't be. She'd seen the claw marks. The blood. Still, she turned. And there he was. Or something shaped like him. Liam stood in the path, barefoot, wearing the same blue dinosaur pajamas he'd vanished in. But his eyes, they were dead. Black. Hollowed out like tunnel mouths. He smiled. His jaw cracked unnaturally wide. We missed you, he said. Behind him, dozens of eyes blinked open in the dark. Something moved. No, many somethings. Crawling. Standing. Breathing. They emerged like mist, childlike figures with melted faces and twisted spines. Some dragged limbs too long. Others were eyeless and grinning. All wore faces stitched crudely onto their skulls like Halloween masks. Faces Lyra recognized. Neighbors. Schoolmates. Her father. The thing in Liam's skin stepped forward. He's waiting, it said, and pointed deeper into the woods. She ran. Branches tore at her legs. Thorns bit into her arms. Somewhere behind, the laughter returned. Now in her father's voice. Now her mother's, who had died years ago. Now her own, distorted and warped. She stumbled into a clearing, wide and moonlit. In the center stood an altar made of bone. Not carved. Grown. It pulsed with faint red light. Atop it lay a cloak made entirely of skin. Human, pale, and still twitching. The book in her pack buzzed with heat. A whisper echoed through the clearing. Put it on. She backed away. No. Put it on, or wear your brother instead. And then they stepped from the trees, the wearers. They were tall, hairless, pale like grubs. Each one wore a face, some old, some fresh. Their torsos were lined with zipper-like scars. From their backs, long, gnarled claws reached around, slowly pulling the skin cloaks tighter around themselves. One pointed at her with a skeletal finger. She smells like the original, it rasped. She's the last, said another. The one he left unfinished. Then a howl tore through the sky, not wolf, not human. Something in between. It shook the leaves from the trees. The wearers bowed their heads. From the shadows came a figure. He was tall, too tall, and draped in the remains of those he had stolen. Patches of faces stitched across his shoulders like badges. His hands were clawed. But the face? It was her father's. Almost. But older. Broken. And smiling. Lyra, he said. You came. Her legs locked. She couldn't move. The figure stepped into the moonlight, and with a hiss, the human skin began to melt away. Beneath it, fur and rot. Jaws too wide. Teeth made for shredding. Not a wolf, not a man. A thing. The bad wolf. Lyra grabbed the book and opened to the last page. A ritual. A summoning. No, not a summoning. A trap. It required a name. The true name of the beast. And blood. She bit her thumb, hard, smearing blood across the page. The wearers shrieked. The bad wolf roared. You don't know it, he screamed. You'll burn before you speak it. But Lyra knew. Somewhere in her blood, in her family's legacy of silence and buried truth, the name echoed. She spoke it. The clearing ignited. The clearing burned red. Not with fire, but with a heatless light, a searing, unnatural glow that pulsed from the pages of the book in Lyra's shaking hands. The symbols inked in dried blood danced across the parchment like insects writhing in agony. Her blood, still wet on the page, had activated something ancient, and the bad wolf screamed. His howl shattered the stillness of the forest. Birds exploded from treetops. The wearers fell to their knees, clawing at the sewn seams of their stolen skins. One let out a shriek as its face slid from its skull like melting wax, revealing an eyeless void beneath. But Lyra didn't flinch. She kept chanting. The name, the wolf's true name, echoed from her lips with weight. It wasn't a name spoken in human tongue, but something deeper, older. It reverberated through the marrow of her bones. The wolf stumbled, clutching at his face, her father's face, as cracks spread across it like glass under pressure. "You should know that," he growled, voice now layered, as if 100 mouths whispered beneath the surface of one throat. "They promised me your line was broken." Lyra stepped forward, her feet bare and bloodied from the run, yet firm with purpose. "My family buried your truth, but not deep enough. And I remember what you did to Liam." At the name, the wolf paused, not with guilt, but something colder. A smile spread across the decaying skin. "He screamed your name when I peeled him," it said. "But your bloodline called me here again. That's what happens when a curse isn't ended, just delayed." Suddenly, the bone altar behind her cracked down the center. From within, a pale vine of roots surged upward, wrapping around the cloak of human flesh lying atop the altar. The cloak twitched, not with magic, but life. The ritual had begun, but not the one Lyra intended. From the edges of the clearing, shadows slithered. Figures emerged, not wearers this time. Not spirits. Family. Her ancestors. They wore robes sewn from bark and fur, stitched with bones and silver thread. Their eyes were hollow, their lips sewn shut with red thread. Yet Lyra recognized some from old portraits hidden in the attic. Great-grandmothers, long-dead uncles, all marked with the same birthmark Lyra had on her shoulder, a crescent moon cradling a thorn. They circled her. One stepped forward. A woman, tall and regal, her face tight with sorrow. The thread in her mouth unraveled slowly. Her voice was dust. "You awakened the blood curse, child. You opened what we sealed." "I was trying to end it," Lyra snapped. "And now it feeds," the woman replied, looking at the growing vine. "The wolf is just a mouth. The root runs deeper. Beneath Eldergrove. Beneath you." The ground trembled. The wolf laughed. "Did you really think I was the worst thing buried out here?" It sneered, voice breaking into overlapping growls. "You were never the sacrifice. You were the seed." The roots split open like a wound, and something began to rise. Not a creature, not a person, but a presence. The First Mother. In a flash, Lyra saw everything. A forgotten village, centuries ago. A famine. A woman with a child who would not stop crying. A deal whispered into darkness. A promise of food in exchange for one innocent bloodline. She saw her ancestor carving a circle into the earth, placing the infant, her bloodline's firstborn, into the center. And she saw the wolf arrive, cloaked in smoke and shadow, wearing the face of a priest. The ritual bound them. One child offered each generation. And, if that promise ever broke, the roots would awaken. Lyra collapsed, gasping. "I'm not your sacrifice," she muttered, trying to crawl backward. The wolf's mouth split wider. "No, little lamb. You're not the sacrifice." He pointed behind her. "You're the one who must choose it." From the trees came a sound, a sob. A figure emerged. Liam. He looked whole again. Not melted, not possessed. Just a frightened little boy, eyes wide and full of tears. He reached for her. "Sis, please." Lyra's chest shattered. Her heart screamed. But the book snapped open again. A new page had written itself in blood. The curse must feed. To sever the root, one of the bloodline must be given willingly. One soul for all souls. One sibling for the tree to die. The vines were wrapping tighter around the altar now, hungry, waiting. And Liam stepped closer. "I don't want to go back," he whimpered. "It hurts in there." The wolf waited.
So did the ancestors.
So did the mother. Lyra trembled, caught between love and horror. Her hands gripped the book, so tight her knuckles turned white. "No," she whispered. "I won't feed this cycle." She turned to Liam. "But I'll set you free." She took the blood-covered page and pressed it against his chest. A scream split the forest, not from Liam, but from the wolf. The name burned brighter. And the ritual inverted. The vines recoiled. The altar cracked again, but this time it shattered. The cloak of flesh burned to ash. The wolf clutched his throat as black smoke poured from his body. The ancestors screamed as their forms were pulled into the roots, unwilling witnesses to the unraveling of their own sins. Liam blinked. The stitches across his back unraveled. And the forest wept. The clearing collapsed, drawing the roots, the altar, the wolf, and the screaming ancestors into a yawning chasm. The earth closed again, slowly, like a scab sealing shut. And Lyra was left in silence. Only Liam remained, holding her hand. The town of Eldergrove looked the same. Same broken cobblestone streets. Same swaying lanterns that flickered in the evening wind. Same rusted weathervane on top of the chapel pointing in every direction at once. But when Lyra stepped past the town sign, still dangling from a chain like a hanged man, she felt it. Something subtle, like a heartbeat under the soil. She had buried the wolf, severed the bloodline curse, freed her brother. So, why did it feel like the town had been waiting for her? Liam walked beside her, quiet. He hadn't said a word since the forest swallowed itself, since the altar crumbled, since the wolf dissolved into a scream. He was whole. He cast a shadow. He blinked. He breathed. But there was something wrong. She'd first noticed it at the treeline, when they stepped from the woods into town. No bird sang. No wind stirred. And Liam's reflection in the muddy puddle by their feet blinked a second after he did. They arrived at their childhood home, an old brick house swallowed in ivy, the front gate hanging open. Lyra pushed through. Inside, dust and memory clung to every surface. Their parents' pictures still hung in the hallway. The scent of stale wood and forgotten grief filled the air. Liam wandered upstairs without a word. Lyra stared at the living room, heart aching. A music box still sat on the mantel, the one her mother used to play when storms rolled in. She turned the key. The melody began.
Soft.
Fragile. Then a voice. Hers. Singing along. But she wasn't singing. She turned slow. At the top of the stairs stood herself. Not the girl she was now, the other her. Pale skin. Long black hair tangled with leaves. A faint red glow pulsing beneath her eyes. Wearing the cloak of the wolf's skin like a shawl. Lyra froze. The doppelganger smiled. "You didn't burn the root," the other Lyra said. Her voice echoed like it was spoken through water. "You just pruned it." Lyra backed away, reaching for the ritual book in her coat. But it wasn't there. She'd left it, buried in the altar ruins. Her twin took a step forward. "I am the you who didn't say the name, who gave Liam back, who let the wolf feed. I am the child of silence. And you broke the loop." Lyra swallowed. Her pulse thundered. "What do you want?" The doppelganger smiled wider. "To be whole." From upstairs came a scream. "Liam!" Lyra bolted up the stairs, feet slamming wood, heart thudding. She flung open his bedroom door. It was empty, except for a mirror. A tall, ancient-looking mirror with no reflection. Only a door. And in it, Liam stood.
Trapped.
Staring at her with wide, terrified eyes as vines curled around his ankles. Roots with fingers. The mirror pulsed. And then it spoke. Not with words. With images. Visions. Other versions of her life. Lyra handing Liam over to the wolf. Lyra bound in vines, sewn shut. Lyra dancing in the moonlight wearing the cloak, eyes black with hunger. Each version blinked. Each version watched. "You fractured the curse," the mirror said, through her own voice. But now the cracks bleed possibility. Behind her, the other Lyra appeared again. "Let me take your place. Let me seal the wound," she said softly. "You get peace. I get body." Lyra spun, breath ragged. "I am the body." "Then why don't you remember how we got out of the woods?" the twin asked, eyes flickering with red. "Why does Liam's shadow move wrong? Why does your blood still itch where it touched the book?" Lyra stepped back, mind spinning. It was true. She couldn't recall walking out of the woods. Only a blur. A snap. And then the town. She looked at Liam. He looked at her. Whispered, "She's not the only one who followed you." And vanished. The mirror exploded. Shards sliced through the air. Lyra ducked, arms over her face. When she looked up, the mirror was gone, replaced by a spiral staircase descending into the earth. Not physically, but metaphorically, visually, existentially. She knew the way. Beneath the house, beneath the town, back into the root. She ran. Down and down, the spiral never-ending. Her steps echoed as walls pulsed with veins, with the cries of her ancestors screaming her name. "You broke the seal," they shrieked. "You made choice an option. Now every version of you demands to live." And ahead, at the bottom, a mirror room. Dozens of Lyras, each in different poses. Some screaming, some grinning, some decaying. And in the center, a throne of bone. And on it, a child. Not Liam, but her. Her at age 7. Before she knew fear. Before the wolf. Eyes wide. Smile innocent. And holding the book. The child spoke. "One of us must stay. The rest must burn." Lyra's mind reeled. The room spun. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why this version?" The child pointed to her chest. "Because you asked the question." From behind, the other Lyra screamed and lunged, knife in hand, teeth like glass. Lyra turned.
And made a choice.
She didn't fight. She embraced her. And as their bodies collided, the forest returned. A ring of stones. A moonlit sky. The wolf's cloak lying empty. Liam sat at its center, hands covered in red, holding the burned page. "You're back," he said, not smiling. Lyra breathed, shaky. "Which one of me?" He stared. And whispered, "The last one." The wind in Eldergrove was no longer cold. It was still, as if the trees had stopped breathing, as if time had exhaled and refused to inhale again. Lyra stood at the edge of the ruined altar. The stones were cracked now, vines retracted like they had recoiled from something foul. The wolf's cloak lay motionless in the dirt. Just a tangle of fur and shadow, no longer alive, or was it? Liam stood behind her, arms crossed. "You've been quiet," she said. He didn't answer at first. Then, finally, "I don't think you're my sister." Lyra flinched. She had feared this. And yet, some part of her had known it all along. The night they escaped the mirror realm, or whatever twisted pocket of time and memory that place had been, something had happened. Something unexplainable. The other versions of herself had bled into her mind. Their memories, their decisions, their regrets, now tangled inside her like barbed wire. And when the forest had folded back into itself, she was still here. That meant they weren't. But which version had survived? She remembered embracing the doppelganger. The fusion. The unmaking. But not the choosing. And Liam, still haunted, had watched her since. Carefully. As if waiting for something to slip. They camped in the remnants of their childhood home. The house had begun to rot from the inside, like it had been cursed the moment the curse had ended. That night, Liam sat across the fire, his face half-lit, half-shadowed. "I saw something," he said, "when I was in the mirror." Lyra didn't look up. She was cleaning an old hunting knife, not for protection, but for certainty. She needed the feel of something real in her hands. "I saw all the versions of you," he continued. But only one smiled. Only one enjoyed it. Silence. "I think she's the one who got out." Lyra lifted her gaze slowly. "If that were true," she said softly, "why am I still trying to protect you?" Liam stared at her, and his expression broke, not into fear, but into pity. That's what she would say. Later that night, she woke to whispers. They weren't in the room. They were in her head. The voices of the others. The Lyras that died. The Lyras that surrendered. The Lyra that danced with the wolf instead of killing it. "You're not the real one voice hissed. "You liked the power," another murmured. "You chose yourself." She slammed her hands to her ears. But that only made it worse. Now she could feel them, pressing against the walls of her skull like trapped flies under glass. In the mirror across the room, her reflection blinked late. The next morning, Liam was gone. No note, no sound, no footprints, only a trail of blood. Not a smear, a pattern, a circle, drawn around the old tree in the backyard, the one where their father used to carve runes into the bark. The one that had never shed its leaves, even in winter. She approached cautiously, knife in hand. Something pulsed in the dirt. The roots had parted. A narrow tunnel led down beneath the tree, beneath the town, back into the root. The wolf wasn't dead. It was dormant, and Liam had gone to finish it. Or feed it. Lyra climbed down. The walls pulsed with heartbeat rhythms. The roots whispered in forgotten languages. But she no longer feared them. They remembered her. Whether she was the original or the other, she was still a child of the forest. She found him at the base of the root. He stood at the edge of a black pool. In the water, images rippled, faces of children, wolves, mothers with hollow eyes, townsfolk dancing in fire. Liam turned to her. "She's still alive in there," he said. "The wolf." "No," Lyra replied. "She's wearing a new face." Liam stepped aside, and from the pool, she rose. The wolf had taken her mother's shape now. Her real mother, but aged beyond time. Skin stretched like parchment, teeth too many, voice like a lullaby played backward. "Lyra," it cooed, arms open. "I'm so proud of you." Lyra's grip tightened on the knife. "You're not her. But I could be, if you let me in." The wolf smiled, and for a moment, it was her own smile. She stepped forward. "You want me to choose again," Lyra said. "Of course. You always choose. That's what makes you mine." But Lyra wasn't here to choose. She was here to end it. She stabbed the blade into her own hand. Blood hit the pool. The scream that erupted from the wolf shook the entire chamber. The ground cracked. Liam grabbed her, yelling something she couldn't hear. But she wasn't listening. She was calling the versions of herself still inside, the ones whispering, crying, screaming. And this time she let them in. All of them. The coward, the killer, the dreamer, the monster. They didn't fight. They merged. And in that moment, she became complete. Lyra opened her eyes. They glowed red, but not with the wolf's hunger. With clarity. She walked to the pool, where the creature had retreated, writhing like a drowned spider. She bent down, whispered, "You were never the curse. Choice was." Then she burned the root with her blood, and the earth began to swallow itself. She and Liam ran, the cavern collapsing behind them. Screams of centuries echoed upward, then faded. When they burst into the daylight, Elder Grove was gone. Nothing but trees. No roads. No houses. No memory. Just forest. And silence. They stood there, breathing hard. Finally, Liam looked at her. "Are you her?" Lyra thought for a moment. Then, "I'm every version who tried to save you." He nodded. That was enough. They walked into the new world. One where the wolf had no name. No roots. No face. But in the distance, a faint sound. Like footsteps. Like dancing. Like skin being tried on. And Lyra whispered to herself, "Next time, I'll be ready."